It is another edition of the book with me, Susan Bell, and I'm so delighted to know you are watching this other edition. Thank you for joining us. Today we are rethinking the African philosophy of education, a Folonian perspective. This is a very interesting book written by KIJIKA and BILLA, whom I'm so happy to have him on this set today. KIJIKA, how are you doing?
I'm doing very well, Susan. Thank you very much.
So tell me, I am so intrigued to know what pushed you into writing a book like this one, asking us to rethink the African philosophy of education.
Thank you very much, Susan. I remember back in the days when we were growing up in Vilm, how we used to sing. London Bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. What the hell was London Bridge doing in Vilm? What happened to the Kidzomen Bridge?
This is
So, Rethinking the African Philosophy of Education, a Folonian Perspective, is a book which looks at certain issues that are plaguing our education system and attempts to provide some solutions to it. I got inspired because the year 2024 was declared the year of education in Africa by the African Union with the theme Educate an African Fit for the 21st Century. So I was reflecting on how we can educate an African fit for the 21st century if that African is not steeped into the traditional African values and at the same time being able to blend these values with contemporary societal demands and aspirations of Africa. So it is within this backdrop that I had this inspiration. And of course, taking a perspective of Fonlon, we know that Bernard Nsokika Fonlon was one of the greatest educationists in Cameroon. So I used most of his ideas to push through an education system that blends these cultural values with contemporary African societal demands.
Rethinking the African philosophy of education. We want a summary.
It's a response to the African Union's declaration of 2024 as the year of education in Africa. And the inspiration of this book came in 2021 when we had an international conference in the Catholic University of Cameroon, Katuk Bamenda. By then I was doing my undergraduate studies there, and there was an international conference on Bernard Fonlon, Cameroonian Socrates, and pedagogue of our time, fighting back. So when I attended the conference, I was marveled by the many ideas that the different presenters brought to us. Before then, I knew barely anything apart from the fact that Fonlon was, that he translated the Cameroon national anthem. So when I heard these ideas, I was struck, and I decided to do more research on the man Bernard Nsokika Fonlon. So I started exploring his philosophy, and I was equally struck by the emphasis he lays on education, the importance of education in the transformation of society. Of course, we can be reminded by the words of Nelson Mandela, who says that education is the most powerful tool that can be used to change the world. So I could not but be reflecting on education, especially in 2024 when the African Union already declared the 2024 as the year of education in Africa. So rethinking the African philosophy of education looks at the educational philosophy of Bernard Nsokika Fonlon for the development of Africa. So it has a special emphasis on the fourfold dimensions of education which Bernard Fonlon lays out. That is the physical dimension, the aesthetic dimension, the intellectual dimension, and the moral dimensions. So these four dimensions are pivotal in the educational philosophy of Bernard Fonlon. And looking at these dimensions, there is a kind of digression from there to look at how African cultural values, the core values that are at the base of Africa, how they can blend with contemporary societal demands, because we are living in a world that is in constant
Evolving,
motion.
yes, it's
and
evolving.
yes, that globalization and the world becoming a global village.
Yes.
Yeah, so there is a chapter that looks at how these values can be blended to fit into the contemporary societal aspirations of Africa, bearing in mind the Agenda 2063 as put in place by the African Union.
Okay.
So these are the ideas that that have led to the development of this book, and the arguments are geared towards the transformation of Africa and the development of Africa for a better tomorrow.
Okay. KIJIKA, it's time for a forward. We shall be right.
We are looking at the foreword of Rethinking African Philosophies by KIJIKA, Mr. M. BILLA. And this expounds on Africans' philosophy and perspectives. While I was reading this book, there were various things I had to pen down. This particular book is talking about the 4 major themes of African philosophy and conceptions. We have the Ubuntu philosophy, we have negritude, Ojama's philosophy, and conscientism. Ubuntu emphasizes on the importance of independence. I am because we are. And because we are, I am. And this is a book that I would recommend for everybody because of the perspectives we get into Africa, to get to know our origin, to know our own oneness, to know where we are coming from, and to see the conceptions, the things that bind Africa together. Negritude aims at celebrating Black identity, to see the importance of authenticity as an African. It's expounded in Negritude. And this expounds on Ojama's own principles and perspectives and conceptions, talking about African philosophy. Education affects everyone in the society, either directly or indirectly. So this book is recommended to everyone who hopes for a better Africa.
You're welcome back, and you are watching the book with me, Susan Bell, and my guest is KIJIKA M. BILLA. It is now time for you to tell us who Bernard von Loom is. It's true you started at the beginning. Who is he specifically? And tell us how he has impacted your life.
Von Loom was a Cameroonian politician, educationist, and philosopher. He was the first Anglophone to earn a PhD in 1961. That is from Ireland. And when he came back in 1961, he immediately, because of the love for Cameroon and the want to see that Cameroon goes ahead, he immediately engaged in politics, and he served Cameroon in many different ministerial offices.
Let's get into the book proper.
Okay.
And my first question will be, does the current African system of education have limitations? Because I guess writing about this is because you feel that the African system of education has limitations.
Yes, it does. There are quite a number of limitations, some of which are being transformed. When you read the agenda, the document for the Agenda 2063, the Africa we want, you see many ideas that can actually transform the continent. When I remember in secondary school how we used to study things like fishing in Norway, lumbering in Japan, and other things without proper contextualization. That is because fishing is not only done in Norway. We fish in Cameroon.
Okay, fishing is done equally in my own village.
So it's not
in Konsomba there.
Yeah, it's not far distant. And von Loom argues that when you start by educating the child with ideas that are distant from their realities,
from abroad, yes,
it actually does more harm to the tender faculties of the children. So our education is supposed to start from home.
Okay.
What can we talk about? We can use maybe the dimensions of how fishing is done in Norway to inform our own fishing in Cameroon,
Okay.
using the strategies and other things. Not that we spend our time talking about how fishing is done in Norway and stuff like that. So there are just many things. And then you see that our education system also lacks a lot of practicality. There is more of theory without practical implications.
Okay.
Yeah,
But isn't that the reason why they brought in the competence-based approach?
yeah, it is. It is because at least the competence-based approach is going to inform and makes the students to become subjects themselves and not passive passive individuals that they just need to be pouring knowledge on them. But there is still much to be desired.
Okay.
Yeah, there is still much to be desired. When we look at the reality itself presents a lot of limitation as far as the education system is concerned.
Okay, we're going to continue talking about the limitations when we come back. It's time for us to have our Vox Pop. And of course, this is the question we asked the people out there. What can we improve on the existing Cameroonian educational system? What can we improve on the existing Cameroonian educational system? And this is what they had to say.
The educational system of our country is a mismatch to the job market. We train our children in aspects that they do not meet in the job market. So we believe or we pray that the stakeholders of education should come together and ensure that the education the children acquire is that which leads them directly into the job. Training programs should be created from the basic level up to the university level, such that by the time the children graduate from school, they are sure that they are getting into jobs immediately. Sometimes we have a problem because most of the times the orientation is not even the best. So most of our children think that white collar jobs are the best. I think we should start training our children to create jobs themselves. The system should give them the allowance to do for themselves. And if such programs are created and are fitted in the educational systems, in the school curricula, then I'm sure that that would already be solved.
The educational system should be professionally oriented so that the learners should leave the schooling process contented with what they have learned. Consequently, they would be independent and not dependent. First and foremost, the counselors are professionals who are professionally trained to counsel and change the mindset of the learners. We should go in to train more counselors who would go into the different institutions of learning to change the mindset of the learners so that they come out professionally and become creative and productive to the society.
We need a combination of a lot of reforms, like educational reforms, change of policies, and equally putting programs in place that can empower teachers and students on how to know the importance of acquiring adequate training and trying to make students understand that achieving good education is not all about passing exams, and that achieving good education makes them to be self-employed. And equally on the part of the government needs to put policies in place that will empower teachers. That is like giving the resources teachers need, like internet resources, financial resources, that will permit them to love their job. We also need to put in place policies that will check private schools around that are not out to make money, because a good number of private schools out are there to make money. They don't put what it takes to educate the students.
You're welcome back. And of course, KIJIKA, Mbila is still in the studio, and we are flipping through the pages of Rethinking the African Philosophy of Education, a Fonlonian Perspective. Yes, before we went on break, you were talking about some of the limitations, and you mentioned one aspect. Which other aspect you want to mention here?
Each and every one of us has a share of our own blame, like because when you come to our context, because the 4 dimensions that are laid out in this book are actually aimed at stressing certain parts, that is improving certain particular limitations, like the physical dimension. From a traditional African perspective, has to do with hard work and virility, as Fonlon would call it. So, but when you look at our students, you see that there is a lot of laxity, a lot of laziness, and it has an effect on the outcome or the educational outcome. So, from the aesthetic dimension, we look at the African understanding of beauty. What does it mean to be beautiful? It is not just about us moving, and that is living the artificiality of life, but also looking at the moral dimension, which is the next dimension of that this book is tackling. When you look at our university context, you see a lot of moral decadence, and all these have an effect with the educational outcomes. You see students, as a result of the laziness and other things, you see students that are mostly engaged in sexually transmitted marks with lecturers, or bought marks and stuff like that. Somebody who buys marks or who sexually transmits marks cannot actually produce educational outcomes as far as the transformation of society is concerned. We look at the intellectual dimension, it is dying. What I have argued as intellectual drought in the book, where there is dryness as a result of laxity, as a result of the content which is not meeting our needs. So there are many things that can be put in place at the level of maybe our state. You see that every day we export timber and import toothpick. What stops us from producing
the
it in
toothpicks?
Cameroon?
Yeah,
Why do we export cocoa? I was in Manfe last year, and there is a lot of cocoa that is being worked there. Why do we export the cocoa
everything
and then import
chocolate
and other things?
and other,
So what stops us from actually establishing this? Because we talk of unemployment here and there, and these are things that are going to solve part of the unemployment, because our own people are going to be involved in it, and then we can be able to export finished products at our own terms. So most of these are as a result of limitations in tackling the moral dimension of education.
We are now thinking of upgrading the African system of education to better meet the needs and the aspirations of Africa. Now, my question is, can the objectives be met, okay, if we do not take into account, one of the 4 dimensions which you mentioned?
A quick response to that will be a no, because I think even the 4 dimensions are not, they are not the all and all of the.
Okay, the basics?
Yes, I still think that we even need more of those dimensions, because the 4 dimensions are intertwined. You need to have that rigor. That rigor that pushes you to be able to be conscious of your aesthetic being, which informs your intellectual, capacity, and at the same time the moral dimension, which has to do with how you interact with other people. And this is very much stressed with the African philosophy of Ubuntu. I am because we are, which is expressed in so as will the will be will. So it is about that interdependence. So I think that these dimensions are intertwined, and there is need for other dimensions which are already been proposed by the African Union and other great African writers, the Ngugi wa Thiongos, the Wole Soyinkas, the Chino Achebes, and every other person, which is about, because development is holistic. It is not just one-dimensional, it is not bi-dimensional, but a collection of many dimensions that are geared towards a particular purpose and goal.
Let's take a little break, and now we are having On the Shelf.
A book, actually, I would say it's a package of thoughts. It's a collection of ideas put in one piece, and a book could take different forms. It could be what we call a knowledge product based on success stories if you want to capture a process within a project. It could be a creative work based maybe on poetry, a novel, a play. A book too could be a scientific work. It could be a scientific journal. It could be a research based on social facts, things that happen in society. A human-based research. It could be evidence-based, based on the reality, to inform a process in terms of decision making and policy. So you need such data in terms of research to be able to inform. They call it an evidence-based decision making based on knowledge products, scientific work that could maybe touch on, say, health policy, touch on issues related maybe to environmental degradation. Like today we talk about climate change. So basically, like I said, it's a package of thoughts. It could just be based on experience, and it's something that is aimed at informing decision, like I said, policy, to enrich knowledge pool. Anybody can write a book. Yeah. So it's not like it's limited to a particular group of person or a particular scope. So books, they range from different, ranges. So it could just be your experience like a journalist. You want to capture what you've experienced during the years. It could just be a grandmother in the village who wants to share her knowledge. She may not say it, but she can pass it through oral and somebody can document that. There are several preliminaries that come in play. There's what I'll call ideation. Ideation basically is building the idea, the concept, the big picture, framing the big picture that permits you to be able to plunge into something that must have touched you in society. It could just be an experience, it could just be an idea. Like we take, for example, the Kiman I'm holding in my hand. Kiman actually is a concept based on a local coinage from Lamso known as Kiman, which has to do with reconciliation and peace, the completion point of peace. That's a concept. Just like we take a scientific work like this, Guide pratique de lutte contre le paludisme. So this is a practical guide. So it's based on a scientific work to document different components in terms of a practical guide to fight malaria or based on malaria control. So once you have done the chapters, people come, they do a kind of review, a critique. It permits you now to enrich the content. You go back, you review, you redevelop, and then now you can now have a first draft. From the first draft, you do a final validation process where you come now to present the final draft, and then now you consolidate all of that, and you can now say you're publishable.
Yes, you're welcome back. And of course, I'm having a swell moment with KIJIKA and BILLA. We will soon be drawing the curtains on this edition of the program. But before we go, KIJIKA, when a problem is identified, I think the next thing we need to look at is a solution to make our African system of education more dynamic and worthwhile. You suggest an integrated approach. Can you tell us more about that?
When you look at the curriculum, there is need for decolonization. Decolonization, of course, has been a major subject from the 1960s since we got the supposed independence. And when you look at it, you see that we need to be proud of our culture, of ourselves. You see, there are many people that constantly want to look like the white man, to feel like, okay, they are superior. They want to speak maybe like the white man, to feel that they are superior, and many other things. Because we have aspects of curbing educational profiteering. You see that in our contemporary society, there are many schools that are open for profit maximization and not for knowledge generation. We have aspects of things like this educational drought. How can our students, our scholars be taught to go back to research? That what Fonlon calls that the moment one ceases to inquire or to question the status quo critically, he ceases ipso facto to be an intellectual.
Before we go, tell us what is the way forward for you as far as writing is concerned?
I'm looking forward to to having my second book published subsequently,
Okay.
which is the sort of concept of personhood. So I need to go back home.
You seem
and
to
start-
love
and
your
start-
tradition. That's fine.
and start from home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So it is just about constantly be researching and looking forward. What can transform society, and then putting the ideas out there. We don't know who they are going to impact and when and how.
Where can one get a copy of this book?
Okay. Most of the copies are available in Bamenda, but there is an online copy which is sold at a little bit more expensive a price. Yeah. So if an order is made online, it will be delivered.
Yes, give us the contact rapidly.
At your doorstep. Like, okay, you can get it through you can get to me directly for a copy at 671 315177.
Okay.
Yes, in Bamenda. And it can be sent anywhere in Cameroon at the price of 3,000 francs. So there was a kind of subsidization for Cameroonians, 3,000 francs, but the online price is $32. So.
Okay, thank you very much, KIJIKA and BILLA, for being my guest on today's program.
You're most welcome.
Okay,
Susan.
thank you very much for having watched this edition of the program. I give you an appointment for next time, next Wednesday. Be there, okay? Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.